So I recently picked up the Sony ZV-e10 to be sort of a B camera to my FX30, which is my main driver, as well as to be my camera for like sort of content creation and YouTube stuff like this. That way I don't have to keep pulling out my main rig whenever I want to do a YouTube video. But anyone who's used the ZV-e10 extensively knows how abysmal the battery life is on this camera. So while I was scouring the internet looking for potential setups for this camera, I came across a YouTuber by the name of Thomas McClure, who put out a video on how you can make a cinema rig out of the ZV-e10 for less than $200, which is pretty much the inspiration on how I built this rig right here. So shout out to him for that. However, I did a few tweaks of my own to this rig to make it a little bit suitable to my liking. Plus, you guys seem to really enjoy my last video where I talked about why I build cinema rigs instead of using gimbals. So I figured we walk through this rig piece by piece, and I'll also get into why this rig in particular is probably one of my favorite ones that I've built since I started making rigs like this. So if you guys are ready, let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to need when building out the ZV-e10 is you're going to need a cage for it. I went with this one by Left Photo, which has a wooden handle on it. The reason why I like this one a lot because I have pretty thick hands, so when you place your hand on this thing, your finger isn't automatically slipping on the zoom wheel right here that's in the front. And the top of the cage is also a built-in NATO rail, which is going to prove useful for the top handle that we use for this build later on. So once you've got the cage onto the camera, go ahead and slap your lens on there so that way you don't have to worry about that later. And so the next thing we get into is to how to power the camera. So this is where I tweaked Thomas's design a little bit. So in his build, he had a universal cheese plate screwed to one of these NPF chargers with power delivery out. And what he did was once he screwed this together, he actually screwed the bottom of this piece and then screwed it to a tripod plate, which did allow him to take it and actually put it on certain tripods that he had. The reason why I went differently and used two universal cheese plates instead of using the tripod plate as the base is because it allowed me to place two screws down here so that this part where that powers the camera isn't necessarily moving around crazy, and it makes the whole entire rig just a little bit more sturdy and not moving around. Now, you don't have to do it like this if you like the tripod plate build better. It's a great build. I love it. That's what inspired this one. So definitely check that out and think about it. I just like this better because it gives more security. There's nothing moving around when I swing this. And with using the second cheese plate, it also gives me a lot of mounting places on the bottom here. So if I wanted to put a base plate on here, if I wanted to put a tripod plate or anything I want to put on the bottom of this thing or around the front, I can do that with. The charger I actually went with is by Sony. His is a different model, but they make a whole bunch of these. I think they're about 20 or 30 bucks, but I'll link mine to the one that I used in the description. For battery, we're using an NPF 970. So once I got this base complete and ready to go, I go ahead and mount the camera to it. I go ahead and use the screw that came with the cheese plate, and then I use an extra screw that I have laying around. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you now, if you don't have extras laying around, go ahead and buy you a pack of screws for these. It's just always good to have some extra 1/4" screws around in case you need to mount some stuff on here. So once I've got the camera mounted to the base for power, I go ahead and add my top handle. I went with this Nitty Stinger NATO rail top handle. Makes it easy to remove and take off if you don't need to use it. It works well with this cage that has a built-in NATO rail on it. And once you have that, you can pretty much run it the way it's built. But I add a couple of extra things just to give it some flair and some extra functionality as well. So the next thing I add is this little Canvate side handle. I went with this because it's relatively small and fits this small form factor really well. I went ahead and added a monitor to this build. I've got the Fotga 850 TL. I've got a review coming up on this monitor soon, but to give you the short version on why I chose this one specifically. First reason being the HDMI port sits on the back instead of the side, giving it more functionality. You run less risk of accidentally knocking your HDMI out of the monitor that way. Second reason being is it has two NPF slots on the back, and they're also hot swappable, so if one's going dead, you can switch them out and not have to worry about losing your monitor feed. To get the signal, I've just got a simple micro HDMI to HDMI cord, and then I run a simple USB-C to USB-A connection to the actual power, and that's pretty much your rig. You can add a matte box to the front if you want. I added one to mine, but you don't have to do this. And what I love about this rig specifically is because this is probably one of the lightest cinema rig builds that I've ever made since I started this channel. And sometimes if I just want to head out of my house or step out and get some footage real quick, I don't want to have to lug out my big FX30 rig with the Cine back and V-mount battery and all that stuff. That's a pretty heavy rig once you have that thing fully built out. So having a rig like this not only solves my power problem as far as the batteries going dead in the ZV-e10 pretty quickly, it also beefs the camera up a little bit without adding a significant amount of weight to the rig itself. And the best part is if I absolutely wanted to, I could take this top handle and monitor off pretty quickly, take the side handle off pretty quickly, and just run this entire setup on a gimbal if I absolutely wanted to. But of course, I really enjoy handheld shooting, so you won't necessarily see me disassembling this rig anytime soon. But yeah, this is the rig, guys. I really enjoy this rig. This is probably one of my favorite rigs that I've built outside of the FX30 build with the Cine back, which I have a video on if you guys want to check that out. Once again, shout out to Thomas McClure for the inspiration on this video. I can't say that I would have had a build like this if I didn't see his content first. And I'm really excited to get shooting with this thing and see what type of content I can get with it. That's enough of me talking, guys. I appreciate everybody that made it this far in the video. If you found anything helpful, I appreciate if you get this video a like, subscribe, comment down below what you think of this build if you got anything similar to this. It's been another one from your boy DaVinci HD, reminding you the only reason that piece of content that you want isn't out is because you haven't pressed record. See you guys on set. Peace out.